"Can I wash your car for $50?" The poor single mom asks, with trembling hands, her eyes fixed on a dusty luxury sedan. But she has no idea. The quiet man holding the keys is a billionaire CEO, and as their worlds collide in that single desperate question, what happens next will shock you. Because, why does this powerful man hesitate? What does he see in her eyes? And how will this one car wash change both their lives forever? The parking lot shimmered under the late afternoon sun, heat rising from cracked asphalt like invisible flames. Cars came and went. Doors slammed. Engines roared. But Sarah Miller stood still near the edge of the lot, gripping a faded plastic bucket with both hands. Inside it were a sponge worn thin, a half-used bottle of soap, and a small towel that smelled faintly of bleach. Her stomach tightened every time someone walked past her, but she forced herself to stay. She had already been ignored for nearly an hour. Her eyes landed on the black luxury sedan the moment it rolled in. It didn't just park, it glided, silent and smooth, its surface dulled by a thin layer of dust. To most people, it was just another expensive car. To Sarah, it looked like groceries, rent, school fees, and one more week of breathing without panic. $50. That number had been echoing in her head since morning. She took a step forward, then stopped. A flash of memory hit her standing in a hospital hallway 3 years earlier, holding a newborn wrapped in a thin blanket while a nurse avoided her eyes. The father never showed up. The silence back then felt exactly like the silence she felt now. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, dressed simply in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No flashy jewelry, no bodyguards, just calm confidence in the way he moved. His name was Daniel Wright, though no one here knew it. CEO, billionaire, a man who negotiated deals worth more than this entire block before breakfast. Today, he was here for a quiet meeting nearby. Hoping to think without interruption, Sarah swallowed hard and forced her legs to move. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the noise of traffic. Daniel turned, surprised. People rarely spoke to him like that, carefully, almost apologetically. He noticed the bucket first, then her hands, rough and slightly shaking. She looked tired, in a way sleep couldn't fix. "Can I wash your car for $50? She asked. "I'll do a good job. I promise." There it was. The question. Simple, heavy, desperate. Daniel paused. In that brief silence, Sarah's mind spiraled. Maybe it was too much. Maybe she should have said 20. Maybe he'd think she was begging. She hated that word. Begging meant surrender. This was work. She wanted him to see that. She straightened her shoulders. "I just need today," she added quickly, then bit her lip, regretting the extra words. Daniel studied her, but not the way people usually did. He wasn't scanning for danger or annoyance. He was reading her posture, the way she stood between pride and survival. Something tugged at him, something familiar. A flashback flickered in his mind, a much younger version of himself, standing beside his mother at a gas station, watching her count coins twice before paying. He hadn't thought about that memory in years. "You wash cars often?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Sarah said. "A little too fast. Whenever I can. When people let me." There was a pause again, a longer one. Sarah's chest tightened. She could already feel the rejection forming, the polite shake of the head, the awkward smile. She prepared herself for it, the way she always did, by reminding herself that she'd survived worse. Daniel glanced at his car, then back at her. The sun reflected off the windshield, briefly blinding him. He shielded his eyes, and in that moment, he saw the dark circles under hers more clearly. $50, he repeated slowly. "Yes, sir," she said. "That's all." He nodded once, but didn't answer right away. Sarah shifted her weight, nerves buzzing through her body. She wondered if she should say more or less. She thought of her son, Ethan, waiting at home with his homework spread across the table, pretending not to be hungry so she wouldn't feel bad. She thought of the eviction notice folded neatly in her bag. Daniel finally spoke. "All right." Relief hit her so hard she almost stumbled. "Thank you," she said quickly. "Thank you so much." As she filled her bucket at a nearby tap, Daniel watched her movements, efficient, practiced, careful. This wasn't a performance. This was routine. Survival as muscle memory. She scrubbed every inch of the car with focused determination, unaware that the man, leaning against a nearby pillar, was quietly questioning everything he thought he understood about need, power, and chance. Each stroke of the sponge felt like a small prayer to Sarah. Each drip of water carried hope. When she finished, the car gleamed under the sun. She stepped back, heart pounding. "I'm done," she said softly. "I hope it's okay." Daniel walked around the vehicle slowly, nodding. "You did a great job." He reached into his pocket. Sarah held her breath. She didn't know that this simple exchange between a poor single mom and a man she thought was just another stranger was the first crack in a wall that had taken decades to build. She didn't know that the billionaire CEO standing in front of her was about to make a decision that would change far more than the price of a car wash, and Daniel didn't yet know why he felt compelled to ask her one more question. Would he just pay her and leave? Or would he finally confront the past he'd buried for years? And what would Sarah do if she discovered who he really was? Daniel pulled out his wallet and handed Sarah a crisp $50 bill. She took it with both hands, as if it might disappear if she wasn't careful. For a split second, she just stared at it. Then she folded it neatly and slipped it into the small pouch tied around her waist. "Thank you," she said again, her voice steadier now, but her eyes still guarded, like someone who had learned not to celebrate too early. Daniel should have walked away. That was the end of the transaction. Clean, simple, but his feet didn't move. "What's your name?" he asked instead. Sarah hesitated. People rarely asked that. "Sarah," she replied. "Sarah Miller. I'm Daniel." They stood there awkwardly, the space between them filled with unspoken questions. Daniel noticed the way she kept glancing toward the street, as if time itself were chasing her. "You look like you're in a hurry," he said. She gave a small, tired smile. "I usually am." That answer stayed with him. "Not today. Not right now." Usually, as if rushing was her default state. Daniel leaned back against the car. "Do you mind if I ask why $50? Sarah stiffened slightly. She'd learned to expect judgment after that question, but his tone wasn't sharp. It was curious. "My son," she said after a moment. "He has a school trip tomorrow. I came up short." There it was. Not a long story, not a plea, just a fact. Daniel nodded slowly. Another flashback surfaced himself at 9 years old, watching classmates board a bus for a science museum while he stayed behind because his mother couldn't afford the fee. He remembered pretending not to care. "How old is he?" Daniel asked. 7, Sarah replied. Her voice softened without her permission. "He's smart. Loves numbers. Always asking how things work." Daniel smiled faintly. "Sounds like a future engineer, or a dreamer," she said. "Either way, he deserves a chance." The word deserves hit Daniel harder than he expected. In boardrooms, worth was measured in output, leverage, return on investment. Here, it was measured in hope. A sleek black SUV pulled into the lot nearby. The driver glanced around, clearly searching for someone. Daniel recognized him instantly, his head of security. Running late and confused, the driver spotted Daniel and stiffened, then quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. Sarah didn't see any of that. She was busy rinsing out her bucket, preparing to move on, already scanning the lot for the next opportunity. Daniel cleared his throat. "Sarah, where are you headed next?" She shrugged. "Wherever there are cars." He exhaled slowly. This wasn't charity. He hated charity. It made people feel small. But this felt different. "There's a cafe down the street," he said casually. "I was going to grab a coffee before my meeting. You look like you could use one." Her first instinct was to refuse. Pride rose up fast and sharp. Coffee was a luxury. Time was a risk. "I shouldn't," she said. "I still need, I insist." Daniel said gently, not pushing her, commanding. 5 minutes. She studied his face, searching for something: pity, expectation, danger. She found none of it. Just sincerity. "Okay," she said finally. 5 minutes. They walked side by side, strangers bound together by coincidence and curiosity. Daniel noticed how Sarah kept her bucket close, like armor. She noticed how he blended in so easily, like a man used to being invisible by choice. Inside the cafe, the air smelled of roasted beans and warm bread. Sarah hesitated at the door, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked. Daniel held it open for her. "What do you like?" She blinked. "Whatever's cheapest." He smiled, but there was sadness behind it. "Get what you actually like." She ordered a simple coffee. He ordered the same. They sat by the window. For a moment, neither spoke. "You don't act like most people," Sarah said suddenly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Most people either ignore me or look at me like I'm a problem they need to solve," she said. "You don't." He considered that. "Maybe because I know what it's like to be on the other side." She laughed softly. "You, washing cars?" He smiled, but didn't correct her. "Something like that." Another silence fell, heavier now. Outside, the SUV idled. Inside, something fragile was forming. Daniel checked his watch. His meeting would start soon. He had a choice to make. "Sarah," he said, voice lower, more serious. "If someone offered you more than $50 today, not for charity, but for real work, would you take it?" Her heart skipped. "What kind of work?" "Honest work," he said. "And more stable than chasing cars in parking lots." Suspicion flickered across her face. Hope followed right behind it. "Dangerous and bright." "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do that?" Daniel met her eyes. "Because sometimes, one small question changes everything." Sarah didn't know it yet, but this question asked by a man she still believed was just a stranger was about to pull back a curtain on a truth far bigger than either of them imagined. Would she trust him? And what would happen when she discovered who Daniel really was? Sarah stared at Daniel across the small cafe table, her fingers wrapped tightly around the warm paper cup. The question he'd asked kept echoing in her head, louder than the espresso machine behind the counter. More than $50. Real work. Stable. Those words felt dangerous, promising, almost cruel in how tempting they sounded. "I don't even know you," she said carefully. "No offense." "None taken," Daniel replied. "You shouldn't trust strangers." That answer disarmed her more than reassurance would have. She studied him again, the calm posture, the measured voice, the way he listened without interrupting. He didn't look like someone playing savior. He looked like someone weighing consequences. "What kind of work?" she asked again. Daniel paused, choosing his words. "I run a company, not far from here. We need someone reliable. Administrative support. Nothing fancy, but it's consistent. And it pays well." Her breath caught. "I don't have a degree." "I didn't ask about a degree," he said. "I asked if you'd take honest work." A flashback hit her hard. Sitting in a cramped office years ago, our sum in hand, watching the interviewer's smile fade when they saw the gap in her employment history. Pregnancy, single motherhood, survival, all things that never fit neatly into boxes. "I can work," she said quietly. "I always have." Daniel nodded. "I believe you." Aside, the black SUV shut off its engine. The driver checked his watch, then glanced toward the cafe again, unease creeping into his expression. Sarah noticed none of that. Her mind was racing ahead, already imagining Ethan's face if she came home with news that wasn't bad for once. Then fear followed close behind. "What's the catch?" she asked. "No catch," Daniel said. "Just a trial. 1 week. If it doesn't work, we part ways." "And if it does?" she asked. A small smile touched his lips. "Then maybe it's the beginning of something better." Something better. The phrase felt unreal. Like a story someone else got to live. She looked down at her hands, rough from soap and water, then back at him. "When would this start?" "Tomorrow morning," Daniel said. "Tomorrow." Her chest tightened again. Everything in her life was always immediate. Today's bills, today's hunger, today's fear. Tomorrow rarely existed. "I need to pick up my son," she said. "I can't be late." Daniel stood, pulling out his card and setting it on the table. Plain, minimal, just a name and a number. "Call me if you decide yes," he said. Either way. She picked up the card slowly. Daniel right. It meant nothing to her. Yet. They walked back outside together. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lot. Daniel opened his car door, then paused. "For what it's worth," he said. "You did more than wash a car today." She frowned slightly. "I did? You reminded me of something important," he replied. "Thank you." Before she could ask what he meant, he got into the car and closed the door. The engine purred to life. Sarah stood there, card in hand, watching the black sedan pull away. She didn't see the SUV fall into line behind it. That evening, Sarah's apartment felt smaller than usual. The walls were thin, the air heavy with the smell of instant noodles. Ethan sat at the table, swinging his legs. "Mom, did you get the money?" he asked, trying not to sound hopeful. She smiled. "Yeah, and maybe more than that." He looked up, eyes wide. "Like, how much more?" She laughed softly. "Let's just say tomorrow might be different." Later, after Ethan fell asleep, Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, turning Daniel's card over and over. Part of her wanted to tear it up, afraid of disappointment. Another part clung to it like a lifeline. Across town, Daniel stood in his office, staring out at the city lights from the top floor. His assistant hovered nervously nearby. "Your meeting was delayed," she said. "Also, security wanted to confirm, do you know the woman from earlier?" Daniel didn't turn around. "Not yet," he said. But he felt it. The shift. The sense that this wasn't coincidence, it was correction. He thought of his mother again, of how one stranger's kindness had once kept their lights on for another month. He wondered what would have happened if someone had offered her more than spare change. Tomorrow would answer that. Sarah lay back, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. Would she really walk into a company run by a man she thought was just a stranger? And what would happen when she discovered the truth, that the man who heard her desperate question in a parking lot wasn't just anyone, but a billionaire CEO whose decision could change her life forever? The next morning, Sarah stood in front of a glass building that seemed to scrape the sky. She checked the address on Daniel's card for the 5th time, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The lobby doors slid open silently, revealing marble floors, soaring ceilings, and a quiet hum of power she had only ever seen on television. This was not a small office. She smoothed her thrift store blouse and tightened her grip on her bag. Every instinct screamed that she didn't belong here. She almost turned around, but then she thought of Ethan eating breakfast with a rare smile, excited about his school trip. That memory pushed her forward. At the reception desk, a woman looked up and smiled. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm here to see Daniel Wright," Sarah said, her voice barely steady. "He asked me to come." The receptionist's fingers froze on the keyboard. "Daniel Wright?" she repeated carefully. "Yes," Sarah said, confusion creeping in. "Is that a problem?" The woman's expression shifted, polite, but startled. "No problem at all. Please, have a seat." Within seconds, people began moving with purpose. A man in a tailored suit whispered urgently into a phone. Another glanced at Sarah, then quickly looked away. The room felt suddenly charged, like she had stepped onto a stage without knowing the script. Moments later, the elevator doors opened. Daniel stepped out. He looked different today, not in his demeanor, but in how the world reacted to him. Conversations stopped. People straightened. The air itself seemed to make room. Sarah stood slowly, her stomach dropping. "Good morning, Sarah," Daniel said warmly, as if they were meeting at the same parking lot again. She stared at him, then at the people around them, then back at him. You work here?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Yes." One of the executives leaned in. "Sir, the board is waiting." Daniel didn't look at him. "They can wait." Sarah's breath caught. Pieces clicked into place too fast, too loud. "You're not just..." She stopped herself. "You're the Daniel Wright." He nodded once. "I am." The truth hit her like a wave. Billionaire, CEO, the kind of man whose name appeared in articles she scrolled past on her phone. The kind of man who didn't need to stop for anyone, let alone a poor single mom in a parking lot. Her first emotion wasn't excitement. It was fear. "I can't do this," she said quietly, stepping back. "I don't belong here. You should have told me." Daniel's expression softened, but his voice remained steady. "If I had told you, you wouldn't have come." She swallowed hard. He was right. I didn't want you intimidated, he continued. I wanted you to walk in as yourself. The same woman who asked, "Can I wash your car for 50?" Not because she was weak, but because she was willing to work. Silence filled the lobby. I'm not here to be a charity story, Sarah said, her voice trembling now. I won't be pitied. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Neither was my mother, and neither are you. That stopped her. He took a breath. You don't owe me gratitude. You don't owe me loyalty. You owe yourself a chance. That's all I'm offering. Sarah looked around again at the polished floors, the watching eyes, the life she never imagined touching. Then she looked back at Daniel. What if I fail? She asked. Then you'll fail somewhere safe, he replied. And you won't be alone. Something inside her cracked, not from pressure, but from relief. She nodded. Daniel turned to the waiting executives. Clear my morning. I'm onboarding someone. The shock was visible, but no one argued. Weeks passed. Sarah learned quickly, faster than anyone expected. She arrived early, left late, asked questions, made mistakes, corrected them. She earned respect one day at a time, not because of who gave her the opportunity, but because of how she used it. Daniel watched quietly. He didn't hover. He didn't rescue. He let her grow. One evening, Sarah sat at her desk, reviewing files, when she caught her reflection in the glass wall. She barely recognized the woman staring back, tired, yes, but standing taller, steadier, at home, and stopped pretending not to be hungry. He talked about numbers again, about dreams. Months later, Daniel stood in the same parking lot where it had all begun. The luxury sedan was spotless now, but that wasn't what he saw. He saw a moment, a question that had changed two lives. Sarah joined him, holding a coffee. You ever think about how close I was to not asking you? She said. He nodded. And how close I was to not listening? She smiled. Funny how everything comes down to one question. He looked at her. And one answer. The poor single mom who once asked, "Can I wash your car for $50?" Walked back into the building not as someone saved, but as someone seen. And the billionaire CEO who almost drove away learned that the most shocking thing that day wasn't what he gave, but what he found when he finally stopped to listen.